Hi, this is Kerri Simpson. You're listening to Retrospectives on KC Radio 97.7 FM with John Broughton on 3SER. Thanks, John, for all the great tracks, and thanks for listening and supporting community radio. Cheers.
What was the first music that appealed to you growing up?
The first stuff was, I guess, what I realised when I was very young was that everything that I listened to was kind of blues related. So I was listening to people like Led Zeppelin and that kind of thing, and realised that they were actually playing, Rolling Stones and all that kind of stuff, that they were playing blues related music. So I guess I was about 14 or 15 when I figured that one out.
Okay, so it was blues straight away.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, terrific. Yeah. Tell us about those early years overseas that you spent. They would have had a profound influence over where you are now musically.
Yeah, I guess so. Basically I just kind of set out just to sort of travel around, and I went to New Orleans first off because I wanted to go to the festival there. Not that I knew that much about it, but and I just kind of fell in love with the place and happened to go to the right pubs at the right time and bump into local musicians that I ended up sort of playing and hanging around in bands and stuff with. So, yeah, I guess, I've never done the big sort of touring thing that a lot of Australian acts kind of do now over to the States. A lot of the blues acts and stuff do over through that whole sort of roots music circuit. But I've just kind of done on-the-ground neighbourhood kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your initial plan when you first went to New Orleans? Was it a career-based move?
No, it wasn't actually. It was totally for a holiday. The first time I went, and it's always kind of been that thing, it's because I've got friends there and that sort of stuff. It's kind of, well, go over and have a bit of a sing at the same time and have a bit of a vacation, I guess. But it as you said, as soon as I kind of got there, it turned into something very different. And every time I go, I do a lot of writing and a lot of singing and a lot of playing around, and sort of come back with I guess a sort of fresh whole batch of things to do. Yeah.
Did you go there with any preconceived notions of the culture of the area? How extensive was your knowledge before you went there?
It wasn't that great. I mean, I'd done a little bit of reading. Everybody kind of knows a little bit about New Orleans and the music and that sort of stuff. I guess if you're sort of studying blues and stuff, you read little bits and pieces. But I didn't really know that much about it until I actually got there and met musicians, and I guess I learned most of what I know through just sort of being there and hanging around,
Did you find it a welcoming musical community right from the start?
It's weird. It's very different, I guess, from here, because you do have a much more heightened kind of racial element in it,
Yeah.
that we don't really experience here, because it doesn't kind of, racism exists here, but not in the same way that it exists in the States. So, but what I did, so, you would get things like people just kind of laughing at you because you're white, or laughing at you because you're black, or whatever it is. But what I did find always occurred was that once you got over that initial kind of barrier, if you're actually okay at what you did, whether that was singing in my case or playing an instrument, if you actually got to the point where you could get up and play and you were good at it, then all those kind of barriers just came down straight away and everything was fine.
Yeah.
So and that's understandable, given like when you actually stay in the city for a while and you see the kind of things that the musicians go through day in, day out. They have a much more difficult time just trying to play than people, musicians here in Australia do. It's just a whole different dynamic that they're working with. So you can understand why they're a bit reticent initially, But yeah, on the ground, it's a very friendly place. It's a big party town, so eventually everything comes back to the party in New Orleans. Yeah.
Is there ever any ever danger we're going to lose you to New Orleans forever?
Well, that's always kind of been a question. And I've always wanted to stay there, but I've always, I've found that racism thing in the States in general, I always found incredibly difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
And most musicians I know that from here that go over to the States for any period of time will kind of usually cite that as the reason why they can't stay there for too long. It's just, not to say that there aren't problems here, there certainly are, but it's just very different and not maybe so day to day. But I also had sort of family and stuff here, so I never thought that I could go there for too long.
Yeah. You think, though, looking back, you think you'd be where you are now musically had you not spent that time over there?
I don't think so, no. I think it sort of played a crucial part in what I did, in everything I've done, basically. Yeah, and I was fortunate that I went there early on, so it's always kind of been a part of what I do, yeah.
I believe you did a bit of busking today too.
I have in my time, for a long time, yeah. But yeah, I did do that in the early days with the swinging sidewalks, way before, you know, anybody got on telly and all that sort of stuff. It was kind of like a joke amongst a lot of local Melbourne roots bands. We'd all kind of get together on a Friday night in Burke Street. We'd have a bit of a, you know, band play off amongst each other, do a bit of busking, then, you know, collect the money and all sort of go out to our gigs, you know, have a bit of a get-together, you know, a bit of a feed and stuff with the money and go out and play. But, so all those kind of bands did sort of grow out of that sort of bonding kind of experience, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, and there were different times, like when I was in Europe at different stages, and you know, just kind of meet people busking on the street and do a little bit of busking here and there. But yeah, so but it's not something that's been a major part of my career. You know, I guess the older I've gotten, the more wiser I've gotten, and realised how much more trouble you can get to on the streets in a strange town, you know.
Just the same, though, would it have been a learning experience for you in terms of working an audience and things like that?
It kind of is, but even though it's very different from being in a gig, because it's much more immediate, because you know, people are shopping or doing whatever they're doing, so you have to kind of get them in within a very, you know, short period of time and keep them, impress them in a short period of time, and then they're gone, you know. So it's very different than, like, say, so you've got like maybe 5 minutes to work with, as opposed to like at a gig where you've got, you know, 40 minutes or longer to work with. But I think the good thing, especially for singers, is the fact that you're in the street and you have to actually project. So I think it went a long way to helping me develop that really big, strong voice, you know, side of my voice, because I'd never actually had any training, singing training or that sort of stuff. So I think a couple of years of singing out on the streets really develops all the muscles and stuff, you know, diaphragm and all that sort of stuff.
Sure. So, a lot of noise to work over.
Yeah. So I think from that angle, it's really good. It was really good.
And when you first came back here from overseas, did you have a set idea what career direction you wanted to take?
No. No. I think career directions are only almost a luxury, you know, for musicians with company, you know, record company deals and that sort of stuff these days. But I think basically most musicians will kind of have an idea as to what they're trying to achieve, and then given, you know, that the industry is so hard, you just try and work towards that whichever way you can, and whether that means you have to go out and do, you know, function gigs or you know, busking or whatever it is in order to get to that point, you know. Yeah. You just kind of do it. I don't think you can, you know, honestly say that, you know, this is my career and this is how I did it and this is how I worked toward it, because it just, you know, the industry doesn't work like that, certainly anymore. For most people, you know. If you've got a lot of money or something, like, maybe you can do that. Yeah. Not most musicians I know don't have a lot of money.
An interesting step along the way in your career, and I'm sure something you've been asked about many times, is your time with Kylie Minogue as a backup singer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was very short but sweet, but I kind of figured, you know, it's kind of probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So, and you know, and she was actually very, very nice. You know, you kind of go into it thinking, my Lord, what is this going to be like, you know, and it was the whole... It was like a tour around the country, so it's like the whole, you know, buses and 5-star hotels and up at 5 in the morning and off to the next city. So it was the whole grand, you know, industry kind of trip for a while. But it was great, because it meant that we got to sing in, you know, entertainment centres to, you know, thousands and thousands of people. And Kylie herself was just extraordinary. She was a really nice person, you know. So I mean, I only met her very, very briefly, because the way those kind of tours run, it's all kind of scheduled down to the last minute, you know, so she gets about 5 minutes here for a breather and 5 minutes there, and other than that, she's working the entire time, one way or another, you know. But, yeah, it was a very interesting thing to do, and quite, you know, a whole different kind of area of the music industry than that I was kind of used to, you know.
Yeah. Having seen how the other half lived there, is that something for you, do you think?
I don't think that would be.
No.
But, I mean, every musician would love to be in a position where you could actually go out and play those kind of venues and that sort of stuff. That's not the problem. I just don't see how that would be the case for a sort of small independent musician from Melbourne. Yeah. Unless, something major shifted,
Could you handle the lifestyle that goes with it?
Well, it's incredibly hard work, although it may look, people see it as very glamorous, but in fact it's very, very difficult. She's from the limited things that I saw, she would be up at 4 or 5 in the morning, off to the airport, next thing, go and do some interviews, go and do this, go and do that, eat at this particular time, eat these things because that'll give you energy, go and do a little bit of this, and then off and do the show, and then after the show, straight back to the hotel, straight back to bed. It's just extraordinary regimented life. In order just to keep the whole kind of ball rolling, So I think most people would find that very difficult, and none of that kind of glamorous kind of high heels and dresses that you see in the magazines. That's a very, very brief 10-minute sort of part of it, really, or an hour here and there. The rest of it's just incredibly disciplined and regimented.
The thing I've admired most about your work is your versatility as a singer. You cover so much musical territory and do it with relative ease to the outside observer. Is that something you've actively sought, or have things just sort of fell that way?
It's something, I think you either kind of go two ways in music, you either kind of just study one thing all the way, or you kind of have your favourites and then branch out from there. And to sort of function as a musician, you really need to be as versatile as possible in order to be able to go and play in as many bands as possible to actually make a living. So if you're trying to make a living, so it's sort of part of it's been through that, and also just I've been lucky in that I've met lots of musicians from various walks of life and different genres and stuff. So I've always kind of been open to going and learning what they've been into and trying to get my head around that, But so I think it's sort of that sort of thing. It's kind of to do with the day-to-day realities of being a musician and trying to survive as a musician, but it's also to do with just being curious about other genres and trying to explore those. Yeah.
Has it been reasonably easy for you over the years to find musicians that are sympathetic to your desire to experiment musically?
I think so. I think most, it's an interesting kind of question, that one, but I think most musicians are fairly open to, by the very nature are creative, so therefore they're sort of open to exploration, if you will, or discovering in terms of what they're playing. Of course, it depends on what kind of situation you find yourself in, but I have been incredibly fortunate in having a large group of musicians who respect me enough to be quite loyal and to have stood by me through thick and thin, and when there hasn't been work and that kind of stuff, they'll still be on my side. If you
the many projects you've worked on over the years, one fantastic project was the gospel choir that you put in with some great singers. Tell us about putting a project like that together. There must have been a lot of work involved.
It was an extraordinary amount of work, and I think that was probably the downfall in the end, because obviously having that many singers who are like, singers within their own right in one choir, there's always the problem of other gigs and tours and people being away and all that sort of stuff, So it was very hard to sort of keep together, and like you have one gig and you've got to make 50 phone calls just to book one gig, just to confirm and double confirm and stuff. But yeah, it was a great choir, and it probably sparked off a whole lot of offshoots around sort of Melbourne, like now that there's probably a handful of amazing choirs that are performing around town, but at that time, to my knowledge, there weren't that many, if any, really, that were playing around. So it's kind of, created a good legacy, I guess. Created a good little scene around Melbourne for people to actually go out and sing acapella and stuff. Yeah.
For you, what would be the key or the secret to singing successfully in an acapella situation like that? Making it work.
To make it work?
Yeah.
Leave your ego at home, I think.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. It was quite difficult. It was a good learning curve for me, because I've always been pretty much the front singer in any band that I've ever been in. You know, I've always been out the front and not have to worry about doing the backing vocals, you know. That's probably the worst, the hardest, most difficult thing for me is to sort of sing backing vocals, you know, because it's not something that I've ever done. So when you get in a choir where everybody's got their parts and you have to kind of control everything, it was a good lot of lessons for me to have to learn in order to be able to perform without, you know, just totally jumping over the top of everybody over the time. So, you know, there's that element of it. But also, you know, it's great because you then create like a little mini community amongst yourselves, and so therefore you have to learn to kind of deal with that little mini community, you know. So it's good, and it means you don't have to so much and go out and be the artist in your own right, you know, whoever that may have been. You just go out as a group with just your voices and nothing else, and you know, and that's a pretty amazing feeling. Yeah. With
your own work, do you approach an album project with a set idea of the genre that you want to work in, or do you let the recording process take care of that?
Well, it depends. Sometimes some recording projects I've done have been like that. You know, we just got to go in the studio and do whatever comes about. But with things like Sun's Gonna Shine, you know, unfortunately finances are always kind of limited, so you don't really have the luxury of being able to go in and do that. So you kind of have an idea of the direction you want to go into, and then you just kind of work it out as to, you know, what things are going to fit that direction, and who's going to be the person that's going to play those things, you know, that's going to take it in that direction. So you basically just kind of break it all down, song by song, instrument by instrument, as to how you're going to do it. That's how I do it anyway. I guess other people do it other ways, yeah. So you just kind of work out what songs, who's going to play on which songs, and how it's all going to put together, you know.
You've always struck me as an artist that's quite intent on making music on your own terms. Has that always been a top priority for you?
Yeah, I guess so. It's just kind of the way it's sort of come about. You know, I find it incredibly difficult to have to go into a studio with your name on something, with a recording that has your name on it, that is something that you don't have any kind of creative control over.
Yeah.
You know, because really at the end of the day, when somebody listens to it on radio or buys the CD or whatever, they don't have any concept that you have no control over it, you know. So whatever it is that somebody else is trying to make you do for whatever that reason, whether it be financial reasons from a record company that they want a song that sounds a particular way, there's a whole lot of criteria as to why they might want you to record something, you know. It might fit into their concept for that month. I find that really difficult then to have to, but it's your actual name on the end result product, you know. So yeah, I have always tried to, I've done those kind of things a couple of times, but I've always thought it's very important to actually to have a product that is actually along the lines of what you want rather than what anybody else wants, you know.
Yeah.
And the main thing I think for most musicians is usually the financial restraint of that, you know. Sometimes you don't end up with something that is totally exactly how you want it because you just don't have the finances to be able to do that, you know. But yeah, I think it's very important because at the end of the day, someone picks up that CD in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 30, 40, whatever, it's your name and nothing, you know. The rest of it and how that process of how that music got onto that disc is lost, you know, but it's still your neck on the line, really.
What about your songwriting? Have you had a confidence in yourself as a songwriter right from the start?
Yeah, I guess I realised at the beginning there was lots of things I had to learn about it and stuff, and I guess over the years I have, you know, refined that thing and honed those kind of skills. But yeah, it was kind of like, you know, it's like one of those things where it always sounds like it's this incredibly fantastic kind of area that takes this incredible skill and talent. It does take some kind of skill and talent to do some things, but it's almost kind of, you know, for me, it's also the same kind of thing as like getting on a bus or, you know, a mechanic going and fixing a car or a plumber going and fixing a tap, you know. It's basically you just sit down and do it, and it might not be fantastic, but you just keep doing it often enough, you'll be able to do it very well, you know. And sometimes I think, people who aren't musicians sort of think there's this great mystique behind, creating songs and writing and going and playing, and there isn't really. It's just a matter of repetition and honing those skills and actually sitting down and doing it. It's like singing. People are really scared to get up and sing, and the main reason why they can't sing is just because they're scared about to get up and let a big noise out.
It's the thought of it more than anything else.
Yeah, and I think songwriting is in particular that kind of thing. I can sit down with my little 3-year-old and muck around it, and she'll sit down and come up with a little song. It might be the daggiest, dumbest song you've ever heard in your life, but it's a little song. It's all pretty. If you can talk and think, you can kind of do those things. It's just getting over the fear of doing them.
Yeah. Do you have a set procedure you go through? No?
I used to be before I had kids.
Changes everything, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But no, but generally I kind of come up with lyrics first and then think about the music.
Mm-hmm.
I know other musicians do it kind of music first and then worry about the lyrics. But depending, if I'm in a studio situation with a few buddies and we have the luxury of being able to sit around and do it, we might do music first and then worry about lyrics and melody lines and that kind of stuff. It just depends on the situation, what kind of song it is and what it's being written for, whether it's been written to play live or whether it's been written to be recorded or, whether it's that kind of stuff. That depends on the approach that I have here.
Any thoughts about the direction you're going to take with your next album?
Well, I've actually got ideas for about 10 albums at the moment. I think most musicians probably would have, it's always, again, just depending on their straits. But, at the moment, I'm not entirely sure. Because it's kind of like, did the sort of electric blues album with Confessing the Blues and then the big sort of world contemporary thing, original thing with the Voodoo album, and now this is kind of stripped right back to the sort of very early blues stuff. So I'm not entirely sure, given that of those 10 ideas that I've got, we'll probably be able to do one. I'm not entirely sure what that will be, but it'll be something.
And just to finish up, Kerri, what's on your books for 2004?
Well, we're doing a few little tours interstate here, there and everywhere, a few sort of little country Victoria things. Just basically trying to promote the album as best we can, I guess that's what we're aiming at,
Terrific. Well, Kerri, thanks for taking the time out to speak to me this morning.
Oh, thank you very much.
It was a pleasure to catch up with you. Thanks for all that wonderful music over the years, and we certainly look forward to plenty more to come.
Oh, thank you very much.
And 3 cheers to your daughter there. She did a wonderful job.
She did, didn't she?
Out of your way. Good on you, Kerri. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Cheers.